Hi guys, welcome to Little Wicket Railway. I'm Rob, and in this video we've been granted exclusive access to Rocks by Rail, the living Ironstone museum. The museum's located in the beautiful Rutland countryside, and I've not been here before. I've read that they've got a really interesting collection of locomotives and rolling stock. I've been told that there's some shunting to do today, so I can't wait to see that. Plus, I've heard that they've just taken delivery of a couple of really special wagons that have appeared on TV. So let's get inside and take a look around. Rocks by Rail, the living Ironstone Museum, is a combination of reclaimed quarry, industrial railway and nature trails that take you on a journey back in time to an industrial age where ironstone quarrying transformed the landscape. Quarrying was a significant influence on the area from the 1800s into the mid-20th century, and the museum aims to preserve this industrial heritage. The 19-acre site is located at the railhead of the old Midland Railway branch line that was created in 1882 specifically to serve the industry. The ironstone would be brought along narrow tramways to the exchange sidings, transferred to wagons and transported up the branch to connect with the Syston and Peterborough line at Ashwell Junction. The museum boasts a demonstration line that runs for 3/4 of a mile along the former Midland Railway route, offering shunting demonstrations and passenger brake van rides. They've got the Simon Layfield Exhibition Centre containing a large collection of historic locomotives, and the Woolsthorpe Workshop where locomotives and wagons undergo repairs, maintenance and restoration. There's the 1960s style Sundew Cafe, named after the huge dragline excavator, and this also houses various exhibits and working models. Dotted around the site are examples of industrial machinery, including shovels and excavators, some of which can be seen in operation. This really is a living museum where you can see live demonstrations of excavator equipment and both steam and diesel shunters being used to move wagons around. Ian Smeaton, one of the trustees, was on hand to tell me more about the history of the museum, the activities and what the future holds.
My name's Ian Smeaton. I'm a trustee at the museum, at Rutland Railway Museum, Rocks by Rail, but I originally started as a volunteer about 4 years ago. The museum was originally founded in 1980. It actually started earlier than that as the Market Overton Industrial Railway Association up at Market Overton, just up the road there, which was a preservation attempt in the mid-70s. And when that wasn't going to go forward, the land here was purchased, and in 1980 they started clearing it, ready for opening it as the Rutland Railway Museum. Originally it was just that, a railway museum, but because it's on old ironstone sidings and because of the connections to the local ironstone industry, eventually in 2015 or so it was refocused to be purely about the ironstone, which was a huge part of the Rutland area, Rutland into Lincolnshire, in fact throughout the East Midlands, and quite a few of the locomotives and the stock that we have worked in quarries and on the ironstone railways around and about. From 1980 it developed the Woolsthorpe shed, which is the engine shed behind us there. You probably saw that in part of the earlier videos. Originally stood up at Woolsthorpe on the Harlexton and Woolsthorpe systems close to Grantham. It was purchased in 1978, about 4 years after the railway there had closed, and was dismantled and eventually re-erected here in 1985 to give us workshop space. The I.E.C, our Industrial Railway Exhibition Centre behind us, the Simon Layfield Hall, was built in 2015 and finally managed to get most of our locomotives under cover, protected from the elements, from the local metal fairies and such like, and that gave us a huge step forward in conserving and preserving the historic locomotives that we have on site. Rutland Railway Museum, or Rocks by Rail as its trading name, Rocks by Rail is open from Easter to October, Tuesdays, Thursdays and Sundays. And we run on the 1st and 3rd Sundays of the month and the 5th when there is one, and also bank holiday Mondays, normally from 10 AM to 4 PM. On steam day we have at least one steam locomotive, normally one of our two Barclays in operation, sometimes both. We will, on our steam day we'll be running brake van rides up and down the length of our main line, which is, it's only about 3/4 of a mile, but it's through lovely countryside. We also on certain days run quarry trains, so we'll be running more often than not 1, 2 or even 3 diesels, exchanging full and empty loads from our mock quarry up at the top of the site, where we also have face shovel and dragline exhibits, the Ruston RB22s, which we used in some of the smaller quarries. On the first Sunday of the month, we normally run a driver for a fiver experience, which uses one of the Sentinels, Jean or Betty or possibly Graham this year. They were originally from the Oxfordshire Ironstone field, and after that closed in 1967, the locomotives went mostly to Corby before being dispersed further afield. But we've got 3 of the 20 or so locomotives that we used in the Oxfordshire field in use. And so driver for fiver, again it's the full length of the main line, over and above the cost of the admission, which £6 for an adult on a non-operated, non-steam day. We're situated about 4 miles from Oakham, and unfortunately there's not much in the way of public transport around here, so it does mean using the car or at least a bicycle to get here. As we are right out in the countryside. We're 19 acres of what I consider to be spoilt countryside. We're in the unspoilt country of Rutland, and we've got 19 acres of spoilt countryside, because this is part of the old Ironstone system which fed Exton Park, Burley on the Hill quarries and the Cottesmore West Pit quarries, which between them produced upwards of 1 million tonnes of ironstone a year. Right, so the future for the museum, we can't expand a huge amount. We do own about 400 yards of land beyond the end of our current track, and we'd like to put in a run-round loop there and a platform so that we've got somewhere to actually run to. Medium term, then we'd like to get some more covered accommodation, get rather more of the vulnerable stock under cover so that it's not affected so much by the weather. And it's the usual thing, it's renewing all the time. We need a new roof on the Woolsthorpe shed, we need to reinvest in our loos because they're getting to the point of being life expired. But the museum's future is assured. We own the land, and we've got some young volunteers coming through, so the future is looking good.
Then it was time to get to work. The first task of the day was to move a locomotive named Mr. D from the exhibition centre into the platform area ready for it to be worked on. Mr. D is a TH186V type locomotive built in 1967 and served the Barrington Cement Works and Quarry. The loco carries a plaque to recognise that it played a significant part in history by hauling the last load of material out of Barrington Quarry, which was also the last standard gauge quarry working in Britain. Providing the power to Mr. D was Betty, an 040 Sentinel built in 1964. She started life working for the Oxfordshire Ironstone Company at Roxton, Oxfordshire, before transferring to Harlexton Quarries in 1967. Betty joined the museum in 1986 and is another historically important locomotive, having worked the last load of ore quarried at Harlexton's Hungerton Face. With Mr. D parked up in the platform, that was Betty's work done for the day, so it's back to the shed for her. Doing the shunting were members of the Industrial Diesel and Railway Preservation Group, and their chairman, Toby Kirkby, was there to tell me a bit more about what their group does.
My name is Toby Kirkby. I'm the chairman of the Industrial Diesel and Railway Preservation Group. We are a group who specifically aimed at preserving and restoring as many historical industrial diesel locomotives as we can possibly get our hands on. We were formed in 2016 out of a group of members from a different railway society who realised there was a kind of niche in the market, an untold story, if you like, of these machines and what they actually meant to the country and what they did. So we kind of formulated a bit of a plan, what we wanted to do and who we wanted to be, and here we are today at Rocks by Rail after one heck of a journey, shall we say. We've always had a healthy working relationship with Rocks by Rail. We used to regularly visit as a group and come down and see what they were on with, because again, they've got lots of historic things that we're interested in, the diesels and the steam engines as well. You know, there's a lot of niche stuff here, a lot of rare historic stuff. Then about 3 years ago, we were invited down by their general manager. We were looking for a base to put 1382, which this is where it originally came from, having worked only 5 miles up the road. And once we'd finished restoring the locomotive closer to home, because we all come a fair distance to get here, we decided the best place was to return her back to where she came from. She's most suited to the museum, so nowadays we help out down here with the restoration and the running. I mean, we get involved in a little bit of everything. You know, whatever needs doing, we'll help them do it. Current projects, we recently got donated a dogfish ballast wagon, which we primarily took on because it was going to be good for Rocks by Rail. That's in a pretty poor state underneath, so we're in the middle of welding that up, making some new chutes and putting that back together. There's also a lot of the Rocks by Rail diesels that we intend to work on. Kett and Fowler in the shed, we've done quite a bit of the work on that. There's the Janus down the far end, that's obviously a big love of ours. We love Yorkshire engines, so getting that Janus going down the bottom would be absolutely fantastic. But pretty much anything that needs doing, we will be working on it, we will be helping and having a long, successful future with Rocks by Rail, hopefully.
Then it was on to the next job. The museum had just taken delivery of 2 goods vans, and it was 1382's job to release them from behind some wagons. The whole lot needed to be moved. The vans were to be shunted into the platform area, uncoupled and parked, then the wagons would be pulled forward and then moved back into the siding they originally came from. You might have noticed the unusual London Necropolis and National Mausoleum livery on these vans. This isn't original, the vans were painted into this livery for their appearance in the TV drama Ripper Street. They featured in the dramatic first episode of Series 3, which starts with some rather far-fetched criminal activity involving the railway, resulting in a huge crash. One of the vans will keep its TV livery, and the other is to be restored and given a more conventional look. The wagons are British Rail iron ore tippler wagons that were donated to the museum, then transformed to look like the internal tippler wagons used at the Ketton, Rutland and Barrington quarries. These were used to transport the raw materials for the cement making process from the on-site quarries to the production plant. With the vans parked up, it was time to get the wagons back into the siding. "1382 was clearly a much-loved locomotive, so I asked Toby to tell me more about her.
So 1382 is an 060 Yorkshire engine, built in 1962 by, obviously, the Yorkshire Engine Company. She is one of only 3 surviving, and there were only 11 built. So it's a pretty rare locomotive on its own. She took about 5 years to restore, all done by young volunteers of the Industrial Diesel and Railway Preservation Group. Most of it was cosmetic. The engine and all the transmission, everything were in pretty good condition. So, you know, we got away with it lightly in that respect. But yeah, she's kind of the pride and joy of the group, as well as some of the other engines and rolling stock we've got. So yeah, that's pretty much the story of her so far.
The group then gave a shunting demonstration using 1382 and their collection of LMS hopper wagons, which were all built in the late 1930s. Shunting these wagons is a real team effort. Even with only 5 wagons, it's very hard for the driver to accurately judge where to stop. So the team on the ground are essential for guiding the loco into the right position using hand signals. I've been to plenty of heritage railways before, but the focus has always been on transporting passengers rather than shunting wagons. So this experience was a first for me, and I've got to say there's something very enjoyable about watching wagons roll, hearing the chains clinking and the clang of the buffers coming together. I asked Toby to explain to me why the preservation of industrial railway heritage was important.
Industrial diesels really don't get the sort of attention they need. You know, a lot of these things unfortunately end up being cast aside because they haven't got the capabilities of larger mainline type diesels, and they haven't got the romance of a steam engine in some people's eyes. So they end up being bottom of the priority list and usually, you know, falling into disrepair. And, you know, when a railway's looking for money, the first thing they end up scrapping is industrial diesels, which is a real shame considering they are historically important. You know, they're not making any more of these. So, yeah, I mean, the one thing I think we all need to consider in the preservation world is the importance of industrial diesels and helping keep that side alive and that story alive.
The vans needed to be moved again, and this time I was allowed up into the cab to get a driver's eye view of things. Driver Stephen gave me a quick overview of the controls, and I was even allowed to have a go driving, which was amazing. I also got to see how a shunter's pole is used to hook the 3-link couplings.
Whilst the guys finished off relocating the vans, Ian offered to give me a tour of their Woolsthorpe Workshop and show me the projects that they're working on at the moment.
This one here is Ketton number 1. It's a Fowler locomotive. It was from Ketton Cement Works, which is not far away in Rutland. She worked there up until about 20 years ago when they changed things around and started hiring in locomotives instead of having their own and hiring in crews as required. And she came here, she was absolutely covered in cement dust. More than covered, she was concreted. In fact, one or two of the reprobates nicknamed her the concrete block, and it's taken a long time to grind off literally all this hardened cement dust and bring her back to bare metal. She's gradually being repainted, and hopefully within the next 12 to 15 months she'll be operational again. It's not far away now. It's a lot of it is just cosmetic painting and restoration of the fuel tank particularly. That's the next big job, and a bit of corrosion on the cab roof and on the bonnet roof itself, but she's not far away. Next one, we've got a Midland brake van. It's not actually a Midland brake van. It's built to the Midland design, but was only ever used around Corby Steelworks, the lines serving quarries around there. She came here as pretty much a wreck. She's almost complete in terms of finishing now. A bit more painting to do on the chassis, a bit of grinding off of some of the corrosion and reinstating some of the footboards. But one man basically has done this over the course of the last 4 years. It's been his project. I've had a very, very small part of it, but only very, very small. The vast majority of it's been done, as I say, by one man. Next we have Elizabeth. She's a little pecket, used to work up at Mount Sorrel Quarries in Leicestershire. Belongs to our chairman and treasurer, sorry, not chairman, our general manager, and is his pet restoration project. She's been hydraulically tested. She's basically, it's mostly cosmetic, putting back the boiler cladding, putting back the cab and the saddle tanks, and with a bit of luck, she'll be our next operational steam locomotive for the next few years, because we're going to lose boiler tickets on both Sir Thomas Royden and 1928, our two operational Barclays within the next 12 months.
Whilst we were in the workshop, the team had got the brake vans ready, so we jumped on for a run up the line. Reballasting work was taking place further up, so we couldn't go the full length, but it was great to experience what it would have felt like to have been a guard. When we got back, there was just enough time for a quick tour of the exhibition centre, starting with one of the museum's most significant exhibits.
This is Singapore, built 1936 by Robert Stevenson and Hawthorne up in Newcastle for the Royal Navy. She was shipped out to the Singapore dockyard in 1939, and of course the Japanese invaded in 1942. Took 80,000 Allied servicemen prisoner, along with Singapore, and Singapore unfortunately was worked to death through the occupation of Singapore itself, and suffered one or two wounds as well. She can't tell us about the bullet holes, exactly when they happened, whether it was during the invasion or at some point during the occupation. Singapore was repatriated in 1953, worked at Chatham Dockyard and was sold into preservation in 1971. She was the first locomotive on site back in 1980 and the first one to steam on site. She is a war memorial in her own right, dedicated to the memory of the Far Eastern prisoners of war, the FIPO Association, and COFIPO, which is the children of Far Eastern prisoners of war, and a very important memorial to the many men and civilians and women who fell during the Japanese occupation of Singapore and the Far East. The white orchid is the flower of remembrance for FIPO because the poppy didn't grow in the Far East, strangely enough, but the white orchid is their flower of remembrance.
And Singapore isn't the only historically significant locomotive that the museum holds.
Betty, first sentinel in the line there, she was the last working locomotive at Harlexton up near Grantham in 1974. Mr. D, which is out in the platform there, was the last working locomotive at the Barrington Quarry in Cambridgeshire, and that was the last quarried railway that was operational in the UK, finished in 2005. The second last Ruston ever built, with Eric Tonks in the other line there on the other side. So, you know, there are some fairly historical locomotives. The number of volunteers we have here means that we're limited in the amount of work we can do, and it's an ongoing thing to keep things ticking over. Steam locomotives, every 7 years you're looking at a boiler overhauled. It might just be as simple as a retube. It could be Sir Thomas Royden, I believe, needs a new firebox, so that's a big job. So that's going to be several years she's out of traffic. Smaller jobs we can do in-house. Some things we do have to contract out, but we try and do as much as we can in-house. We've got retired guys from Corby Steelworks, we've got electricians, we've got plumbers. They're all useful when it comes to doing the jobs that go together to help keep these locomotives operational.
There was still a bit more work to do with moving the van, so I let the guys get on with it. But the more time I was spending around the locos and chatting to the team, the more I wanted to get involved. So I asked Ian and Toby to tell me about volunteering and membership options.
We'd welcome anybody to volunteer. You don't have to have a specific skill set, you don't have to have any skills at all. If you want to learn something, we'll teach you. If you have skills, then that's great, because we'd like you to pass them on to the youngsters coming through. And we're lucky that we do have a good number of youngsters coming through. This has been a difficult patch over the last few years. But in the last couple of years, we've had 3 or 4 young lads locally who've come out of the woodwork and joined us. And, you know, you don't have to commit to any particular amount of time. You know, you don't have to say, I'll do a day a week or a day a month or even a day a year. You turn up, you can join any activities you really want to. So it doesn't matter whether you want to be a steam driver, you want to help out in the cafe, you want to do some gardening, some track work, whatever. We've got space to fit you in somewhere.
We welcome anyone of any age. Our group tends to be quite a lot of people that are under 30, certainly 35. We've got a few older members. But yeah, we're just young, enthusiastic, so anybody else that's young and enthusiastic and got an interest in industrial diesels or just wants a nice group to work with, you know, we're more than happy to welcome people under our wing.
Wow, what an incredible day. The team here have been so welcoming, they're really knowledgeable, and their enthusiasm is infectious. It's not the biggest railway in the world, but there is lots to do here. And if you're a fan of industrial railways or large excavator equipment, then you will be in heaven. Plus, the location is stunning, there's plenty of wildlife, and you get some fantastic views. If you'd like to know more or are planning a visit, then I'll leave a link to their website in the description below. Thanks to Ian from Rocks by Rail and to Toby from the Industrial Diesel and Railway Preservation Group for inviting me along today. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I will hopefully see you again soon.